From the beginning, movies have called upon the magic of special effects to put on screen that which could never exist in real life, that which can only become real on a strip of celluloid. Méliès, at the turn of the century, was a pioneer, taking existing photographic techniques and putting them to novel uses, creating a new kind of image. This special magic continues today, when showing the unreal, inventing the supernatural remains one of the seventh art's great attractions. In addition to optical effects, various other techniques, such as makeup and machinery, have their place. The only limits are those imposed by imagination and talent. If there's one area in which technique and talent are still closely married, in which the artist's imagination is free to fly beyond the constraints of reality, it's in the realm of fantasy and science fiction pictures. For the past 20 years, special effects have occupied the foreground in cinematographic production. They've come to be associated with a splurge of expensive processes and equipment. Unfortunately, this has led some to overlook the fact that this is one domain in which ingenuity is the key word, and in which talent is not synonymous with dollars. Over the years, traditional techniques have become more common and simpler to execute, but they never cease to amaze. Now, everything is possible, and the degree of complexity depends solely on the producer's ambitions. SFX is the industry term for special effects. The most elaborate modern materials are used in conjunction with proven techniques, and revolutionary technical procedures are sometimes coupled with the simplest materials. Progress and research are frequently aimed at finding up-to-date expression for age-old tricks. You're going to discover a fascinating, little-known world in which latex and bicycle wires are featured players. We'll even leap into the future with computer-generated imagery. Our hosts will include Kevin Yagher, Bob Keane, Tom Savini, Bob Short, Pascal Pinteau, Charlie Chiodo, Kenny Myers, Gary Sherman, and Randy Cook. We're in Hollywood, the mecca of motion pictures, where there's a studio entrance at the corner of every street. We're witnessing the shooting of the latest production from the fertile imagination of Roger Corman, King of the Bees. In the 50s and 60s, he shot a series of low-budget but frequently enjoyable pictures with great talent and a lot of economic imagination. Times have changed for Corman, and he's now head of his own production company. The makeup technique used here is standard. The use of new materials, however, opens up a world of possibilities. Extras and actors are getting ready for the shooting of a particularly whimsical monster ball. We see them coming out of the makeup studio, where they've undergone radical transformations. There are some very strange street people hanging around outside the studio, fiends and freaks from all the classic fantasy pictures. Some require makeup applied directly to the skin. The transformation is immediate, though, for those who will be wearing masks that have been previously sculpted, molded, and painted. More fragile and more difficult to realize are prostheses, which are often molded directly on the actor's face or body, and then made up so that the junction with the skin is totally invisible. Shooting can finally start. A sense of excitement grips cast and crew. Everything is set, or almost. All the long hours of preparation, design, and makeup will finally pay off for a few short minutes of film.
Okay, put it on. Put it right here.
playback, please. Okay. And action. You hit my
Great.
This is the workshop where the crew of Mark B. Wolf develops its creatures, including those we've just seen. For Wolf, latex, alginate, and resins hold no secrets. How did he happen to get bitten by this particular bug?
I started at a very early age making my own 8mm and Super 8 movies. My grandfather was always a camera buff, so I had access to all kinds of equipment. And then, thank God, somebody named Corey Ackerman entered the scene and actually published some photos that showed behind the scenes how someone named Ray Harryhausen was actually doing it. It was a revelation. Next thing I knew, I was doing Jason and the Argonauts in my basement. And from there, we went to school. I started out in pre-med and decided, no, this is not what I want to do. And so I used the skills I acquired there as a sculptor, working on prostheses for the Veterans Administration. And one thing has led to another. And I am now finding myself, fortunately, in a position to produce films. Mind you, they have to be done for a certain price, and we have to deliver certain types of quality effects for that price. Now, this particular creature is left over from a Universal TV movie called Doctor Strange. And to my knowledge, this was the first time anybody had ever used polyurethane to make an animation puppet.
Isn't it tough on the nerves to design monsters, zombies, and other fiends all day long? Well, you mustn't forget that it's all just movies, often spiked with a healthy dose of humor.
Serious? Is dead serious?
Okay, no more brain. You win.
In the same macabre vein, Kenny Myers explains the particularly peculiar method he used for The Return of the Living Dead, Part 2. Putrefied perfection.
We have some of the most gruesome collection of books amongst all the people in this trailer. Some of them I cannot even look at. Others are amazing. We use death investigation books. We use books on diseases, all types. There was no time to sculpt 100 individual looks. So what we did is we set a very finite number of faces that were changeable. We could get 4 or 5 different looks out of one face. Anything from very decayed to recently dead. The rest of that characterization comes out of the actor wearing it.
She's getting very claustrophobic. That's why I asked that question.
Tried and true techniques are frequently the best. Méliès's Phantom still haunts the world of horror movies.
And we made a decision early on in pre-production on the picture that as long as we were dealing with mirrors, we would do it with mirrors. And we shot all of the special effects throughout the entire film using no post-production opticals. All of the opticals were done live on the set, which was really fun for the actors too, because the actors actually got to interact with the special effects rather than interacting with a blue screen or a blank wall or whatever the situation would be when you're only shooting part of the visual. The actors actually got to do and react to all the special effects. We had to put the actors in reversed wardrobe, so their coats buttoned the wrong way. Their hair had to be done the opposite direction. If someone had a freckle on one side, the freckle had to be moved to the other side. And it just, the amount of problems from trying to do this without doing opticals were amazing, but it was fun. Every shot in the film where there was any kind of mirror involved was laid out to this kind of detail, where the positions of the actors, and all the actors are color-coded as to who they are, their positions were absolutely worked out. These drawings are all to scale off the blueprints. The red lines on here indicate the angle of acceptance of a 25mm lens, which was the lens we're using in this shot. The purple lines here indicate the angle of reflection off the mirror, so that when I was laying out these shots and doing the mechanical drawings on here, I could see what I was going to see through glass, what I would see reflected in a mirror, and what I would see live.
Stop-motion techniques are used when human players will not fill the bill, as for example, with RoboCop's mechanical enemy. This seasoned system has been used by Ray Harryhausen for more than 30 years, but it hasn't yet been beaten. Randy Cook lets us in for a look at the subtleties of the technique.
One of the things that's magical about stop motion, to me, is, as opposed to another process for bringing fantastical creatures to life, be it a guy in a suit or a puppet working real time or a robot or something, is that it is essentially cinematic. I mean, it is something that can only be seen through the same trick that makes the movie work, you know, the movies in general. And the fact that it is an essential movie art form, if you will. Minor one probably, but nevertheless, you know, it is essentially the movies. It is tricking the eye into seeing something that it can't possibly see. If he's going to look over there from here to here, say, in 1 second, since film runs at 24 frames a second, you've got to make 24 individual moves to accomplish that end. So you actually will make a move about that size for the first frame of the head move. Now, of course, that would be fine if you were just moving the head of the creature, but there are, you know, he has all these other arms, legs. He's got, you know, there's a lot of, you know, movement in a body that has to be you know, sway, what have you, movement up and down. All these things have to be done a little bit at a time. And so you take a figure like this, which is posable and has a flexible skeleton inside, and you literally go around the whole puppet, moving each component part an appropriate amount. Once you've made all the movements for one frame, you walk away from the puppet and take a frame of film, expose the frame, and then go back in and do it again, because that's only 1/24 of a second. So if you're you know, shooting something that's 5-10 seconds long, you better pack a lunch.
Every method is adapted to the desired effect. Stop motion may not be necessary if a puppet and its manipulator can create the illusion. That's how the critters work.
The main thing to make them come to life is a hand up the back, sometimes through the head. And the hand is assisted by 3 or 4 other operators. On eye blinks, we have articulated lower lips, side snarls, front snarls, brow movement. We have rods for arm control, and we have cable-controlled fingers and thumbs and wrist. So when you get 4 or 5 people operating it and coordinating that motion, the thing comes alive. For a lot of shots, it's just one hand and a blink, which is what's hooked up right now. Basically, the concept of critters was that when they had their mouths closed, that they're supposed to be smiling and cute, that you wanted to pet them. It's when they open their mouth that they get real nasty.
If you want to see these aggressive little balls of fur on the warpath, just attach a few strings and a few casters and watch out. There's another way to provide remote animation for a creature, as Bob Keane points out in describing his latest project, Waxwork.
A lot of the stuff, a lot of the witch and people like that, are operated on the cable controls, which can take up to 6 people to operate them. You get some sort of playoffs on that because 6 people all playing together, all playing one part. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. This is another one of our beasties. The radio control. There's the secret to it. Once worn by someone, you can have complete isolation there, so you don't have all those cables hanging out from behind. But you get some problems with that. You don't get as good a movement. It's only good for small movements.
The same technique was applied in Child's Play in order to animate Chucky, the picture's puppet hero. Kevin Yagher was the man to accept the challenge.
Getting this doll to live and breathe. Boy, I tell you, the biggest project I've worked on yet, and biggest undergoing. I knew going into it was just going to be a pain, and it has been. It's been good though. I mean, I've never had to make a doll before. You know, I'm into this business to make monsters, and that's why I got into it, and creatures and things. That's what an old age makeup. I really like doing character makeups and stuff. And this was different, you know, but it's a killer doll, so he's sort of a monster.
Here's Chucky stripped to the bare bones, cables.
The biggest challenge probably was just organizing such a large undertaking, you know. It wasn't just one doll, it was one doll that went through 5 phases. So we ended up with 9 different heads, because at the end he's lit on fire. So there's a head that has to be completely burning. There's a head that has to be knocked off his body and roll across the floor. There's 4 different main bodies, 2 stunt dummy bodies, 2 rod puppet bodies, and then like 6 different just ragdoll bodies, you know.
And then there is that.
It takes a whole crew of technicians to give Chucky life, and they must devote hours of rehearsal to acquiring the dexterity that will make him move realistically. From one day to the next, the results grow ever more astounding.
Well, then I guess your mission is still on. On camera, right?